I'm sure we've all heard of the notorious armed robbers that terrorized Nigeria in the 70s and the 80s. The likes of Shina Rambo, the likes of Lawrence Anini. But before they were, there was someone that paved the way for them. There was someone that walked so they could fly. There was someone that started the Ministry of Armed Robbery in Nigeria. And this man was Dr. Oyenusi. Yes, Dr. Oyenusi. You're surprised that there's a doctor in front of his name, right? In this episode, we're going to be discussing Dr. Ishola Oyenusi, how he rose to fame, how he terrorized Nigeria, killing people and robbing people of their properties. Let's get right into the story.
Thy will has to be done. My spirit shall prevail on my enemies who have conspired to take away my life at this stage.
Hi and welcome to Sleuthville. My name is Neddy and I am your host as always on this show. If this is your first time stopping by this channel, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and drop your comments in the comment section as well. Let's get right into the story. Dr. Oyenusi was from Araromi, Okitipupa, now located in Ondo State, Nigeria. He was born into a very poor family. His parents could not afford to send him to school. They couldn't afford to continue paying his tuition fees, and this made him drop out of secondary school. Now I know you're wondering why there's a doctor in front of his name, right? Because how did he go on to become a doctor when he dropped out of secondary school? Well, Dr. Oyenusi was never a doctor in any sense of it. He was never a medical doctor. He was never an educational doctor. He just gave himself the name for the fun of it. Maybe he aspired to be a doctor. Maybe that was one of his dreams as a young boy. However, he never got to live those dreams of being a doctor. And he claimed that he gave himself the name doctor just for the fun of it. He was born in the 1950s in Nigeria, and he started his robbery attacks as far back as 1959. However, he did not really rise to fame. He didn't really come into the limelight until the 1970s, and this was just right after the Civil War ended in Nigeria. Those who knew him described him as being charismatic. He was a confident gangster. He was hot-tempered and arrogant, and at some point in his life, some people started referring to him as the romantic armed robber. The story behind this is quite interesting about how he came about the name romantic armed robber. So this name came from his first robbery attempt. Now let me just add here that no be today women start to make men they enter trouble. It's not today that the love for a woman has led a man into doing so many things that he probably would not have believed that he would have done in his life. His first criminal act was described as an act of love, and that was why he was called romantic armed robber. Now what happened? Apparently his girlfriend at the time needed money urgently for something, and because he was a man that was in love, he was so in love that he decided to go and rob a man of his car. And not only did he rob that man of his car, he ended up unaliving that man. He took his car, and the money that he made from the theft of that car was around 400 naira. Just imagine, 400 naira. I mean, as at then in Nigeria, I'm sure 400 naira would have been big money, or let's say maybe close to being big money. But after realizing that money from the theft of the car, he took all the money and he gave it to his babe. He gave it to his girlfriend. Can you imagine? So that was what coined him the name romantic armed robber. He was said to never let any of his victims live to see another day. For every single robbery that he carried out, he ended up unaliving his victims. None of them lived to see another day. I mean, this man was a terrorist. People feared him. Just the thought of him being around the neighborhood, just even the rumor of Dr. Oyenusi being around, people would tremble. It will send shivers down the spines of people that lived in that area. They feared him. And what made matters worse was that the government did not have a grip on this guy. Even police officers were said to be scared of him. I mean, he was said to have been working with a lot of men in the force, and people did not really even know what he looked like. Maybe his gang members knew what he looked like. Maybe people that he had dropped before knew what he looked like. But the government did not know what this guy looked like. They just knew that there was a Dr. Oyenusi somewhere terrorizing their citizens and stealing people's properties and robbing people and, committing crimes, unaliving human beings. They just knew that there was somebody terrorizing the country. He robbed both banks, institutions, and people in broad daylight and in darkness, and he did not care if anything was going to happen. Imagine, most times when robberies want to happen, it's probably like most likely in the nights, where it would be easy to escape, where people would not see your face, where things would not get out of hand. But this man was fearless. Like, he would rob banks in broad daylight, he would rob people in broad daylight, he would collect your cars, steal your properties in broad daylight, and nobody dared come close to him or any of his gang members. He was that notorious. At the height of Dr. Oyenusi's horrific reign, he was said to have bragged that the bullet has no power. Unfortunately for him, he would end up dying by the bullet. 27th of March 1971, there was a van conveying a staff of a company known as Wahum. It was an Asian company that was located on Allen Avenue, Ikeja, in Lagos. This vehicle was carrying 10,000 pounds. In this vehicle was a policeman, just one policeman, and staff of the said company. Now, this company had requested for this policeman to escort their staff to the bank to collect this cash, which was meant for the payment of salaries of the company's staff. They had successfully gone to the bank, collected the cash, and they were on their way back to the company. And as they arrived at the company's gate, the driver honked for the security man to open the gate for them. However, the security man did not open this gate for them, and he was taking a lot of time to open the gates. They were there for a while honking, and nobody was actually coming out to open the gate for them. And seeing that they had a lot of cash on them, the policeman then came down from the car to go and see what was going on. And on getting there, he was going to ask the security man what was taking him so long to open the gate for them. But as the policeman came down from this van and walked towards the gates, several shots were fired at this man, and he fell to the ground and died instantly. And after this happened, the staff that were inside the vehicle all came out running, and they scampered for safety. Dr. Oyenusi and his gang members made away with all the cash that was in that van that day. They also made away with the police constable's firearm, his weapon. The police officer that died on that day was known as Mr. Nwi. And the unfortunate thing was that he was just 6 months in the force. He just recently joined the force, and that unfortunate incident happened to him. After this incident happened, the police then set up a 10-man investigative team to investigate into this matter and get the culprits. They had to face justice. Now, when this investigation started, the policemen that were investigating the case discovered a lot of things. First of all, they discovered that the people that were in this Dr. Oyenusi's gang were from different parts of the country. Now, they actually made arrests on some of his gang members, and they brought them in for questioning, just asking them to know how they were able to carry out these criminal acts, how they were able to carry out this robbery, and then they gave some information. Now, bear in mind that I mentioned earlier that the police did not actually know what Dr. Oyenusi looked like. they just knew that there was a Dr. Oyenusi terrorizing the whole of the area, terrorizing the whole of the west and some parts of the east and the country in general, but they did not know what he looked like. During their investigation, they discovered that one of the gang members was an Ijebu boy who was identified as the person that was always the driver for all of their operations. So his major task was, to drive them to wherever they had a robbery and also to drive them back to their destination. And they also discovered that there was a gang member also known as Diokpa. This Diokpa guy was in charge of their armory, was in charge of their weapons, and it was said that it was also in this person's house that they would gather around and share the proceeds of their robberies and of their criminal acts. This particular incident where they went to rob Wahom factory, that's the Asian factory, they were said to have escaped in another vehicle. Now, on the police investigating this whole issue, they discovered that earlier that week somebody made a complaint to the police that he was attacked by armed robbers and that his car was stolen. It was later discovered that this car that was stolen was what Dr. Oyenusi and his gang used to escape from the Wahom factory that they just robbed. The team members or the gang members of Dr. Oyenusi, when they were all caught, they all confessed to the crimes that happened, and they also even confessed that they got the information to rob that particular van that was conveying the company's money from the company's administrative officer, that's the company's admin officer, that he was the one that gave them a tip on what was going on, and that the security man as well in that company was also aware of what was going to happen. And that was why the security man actually was very hesitant to open the gates for the staff when they arrived with that van. And the whole plan was to delay to open the gates, and obviously the policeman was going to come down and ask what was going on, and because it was just one policeman, they decided that okay, once they were able to unalive the only person with a weapon, they would have the upper hand, and that was what they went on to do. His gang members, however, told the police that they did not know Dr. Oyenusi's whereabouts, and this just made the investigation harder for the police officers, because if his gang members did not know where he was and they as well did not know what he looked like, then how were they going to be able to find him and arrest him and bring him to justice? The police, however, did not give up on their quest to find Dr. Oyenusi. They went ahead to ask a lot of people, ask where he came from, and that was when they even discovered that he was from Araromi Okitipupa in Ondo State, and they went there to ask about him, and his people said that yes, he was actually from that place, but they had not seen him for several years, that he had not been back to the community for several years, and this only made things harder for them. Once in a while the police would get information that they saw him at certain places, or it was just rumored that he was seen at certain places at different times, and they would go there but they wouldn't see him until they got an information from a sex worker that he would usually patronize, that he was in Ibadan. When they got to Oyo State, the sex worker actually gave them the exact address of where he was and what he was probably wearing at that particular time, because like I said, they did not know what he looked like. So when they had gotten to that place on that day, the date being the 7th of May 1971, they had gotten to that place, and when they got there, because they looked obviously like policemen, Dr. Oyenusi saw them and he took to his heels. And because they saw that he took to his heels, that was what's now affirmed that was actually the person that they were looking for, and they immediately pursued him and eventually caught him. And unfortunately for him, he was not armed on that day. After he was caught, he was said to have told them that they were lucky that he was not armed, because if he was armed, that he would have unalived all of them. It was just an easy thing for him to do, and thankfully he was not armed on that day. And that goes to tell us that this saying is actually true. This saying that goes, every day for the thief, one day for the owner. Very, very true. Dr. Oyenusi had every day for himself, but that particular day was for the owner, and he was caught. After he was caught, he was brought to the station along with his gang members, and it was said that the police did not even use any kind of brutal force on or any of his gang members, that they were very, very friendly with them, and they did this because they wanted to get much more information, because they knew that if they were persuasive with Dr. Oyenusi and his gang members, that they were more likely to open up to the police. So they were very, very persuasive with them, and eventually they got them to confess to the crimes, and even confess to much more crimes that they had committed. And all of these things were being written down and taken down and being recorded. The gang that carried out the final operation of Dr. Oyenusi were said to have been made up of 8 members, and I'm going to leave the names of these members down in the description box if you're interested in knowing what their names are. And these guys were proven guilty of the crimes of the murder of the police constable, Mr. Unwi, and also for the murder of so many other people, and also for the theft of the company's money. And they were found guilty, and they were all given the capital punishment. And then in Nigeria, the capital punishment was usually executed using firing squad. So this firing squad was said to always be carried out at the Bar Beach in Lagos. And on the day that Dr. Oyenusi and his gang members were going to be executed, it was said that there was a mammoth crowd at the Bar Beach. A lot of people that were totaled to be around 30,000 were present on that day at the Bar Beach, and they were all cheering and they were all happy and celebrating that finally these guys were going to be brought to the books. Now on that day, the 8 members were all tied to a stake, and there was a 16-man squad that was set up to carry out the firing squad. And it was said that 2 soldiers were assigned to each person. So because there were 8, then 2 soldiers to 1 person, and that made the total number of soldiers 16. Dr. Oyenusi was said to have been smiling on that day. He was said to have been smiling, but underneath that smile, you would see that there was actually terror and that there was actually fear in his eyes. He was just smiling, but his eyes were telling another story. It was on this particular day that Dr. Oyenusi confessed that he was not actually a doctor, that in fact he did not complete his secondary school education, and that probably if he had finished his secondary school education, that he would have probably become a better person in the society and not this person that he ended up being. He also confessed that he actually gave himself the name doctor just for the fun of it, and he mentioned that he was actually paying the price for his criminal acts. The commanding officer then went ahead to give the command for the officers to fire, and they started firing, and that was the end of Dr. Oyenusi and his gang members. Now after the firing, a medical doctor was said to have gone round to check all of the members. 7 of them were said to have died. However, Dr. Oyenusi was still alive, and the commanding officer then instructed the whole 16-man squad to concentrate on Dr. Oyenusi and fire. And they all concentrated on him, and they fired until his head dropped. And yeah, that was the end of Dr. Oyenusi, and it's just a really sad story of how circumstances, I would say, would lead somebody to their end. It just goes to say that a lot of things that happen in this life is based on the choices that we make. He made that first choice to, rob and unalive a man just to give his girlfriend money, and that singular choice just led to a series of events that now happened, and that made him become drunk with power, and that made him to become, the terrorist armed robber that he ended up becoming. And he thought that there were not going to be consequences for his actions. He thought for the longest time that the police would never get him, but unfortunately for him, he was caught by the police and he died by the bullet that he said had no power. He died by that bullet. There is really no information about his parents or about his upbringing per se. We don't know if he had any siblings. That information was never made public. But yeah, that is the story of Dr. Oyenusi. And let's just discuss in the comment section what you think of this story. Do you think that he was a victim of circumstance? Do you think that if he was given better circumstances like he claimed, if he had finished the secondary school education, that he would have probably become a better person? Or do we think that these things are, or this type of characters are irrespective of your upbringing, irrespective of your condition? Because there are also people that did not even have the chance to go to school, but they did not go into the streets and start robbing people and unaliving people and becoming power drunk. So let's just discuss this in the comment section and let me know your thoughts on this story. If this is your first time on this channel, please make sure to subscribe. Please make sure to subscribe. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up, and yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. All right guys, bye.